Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me. I'm the Fuzz, and I'm here to entertain. So let's talk Gauntlet. See, in this video, I want to go over the neutral cards that Duelyst has and try to give you guys an idea of what I think of them, which ones you should be picking for your decks, which ones you should not. I'm only going to cover the neutrals in this video because there's just too many cards to cover all in one. And we'll do the class cards later. This is based mostly on how I perceive the game. I still have some ways to go in terms of learning it. I mean, hell, just before I recorded this video, I played 3 Gauntlet runs. 3 Gauntlet runs, started with an amazing 0-3, pretty good stuff, I know, and then a 12-win run, and then a 5-win run. It's weird, right? You go from crap to great to average. That's Gauntlet for you. So let's go over the cards. Now, before we start, there's a few things to cover real quick. First of all, a creature that has 2 health or less is automatically worse because it dies to the general. Just the general kills it in 1 hit. So unless that creature has a good effect, it's kind of bad. So let's go over the cards, starting with the 1-drops. Dragonlark, a 2/1 flying. The flying is mostly irrelevant. It'll fly over somewhere and then it'll just get killed. It'll do 2 damage. Yeah, no one cares. It's trash. Oh yeah. So before we start, we're gonna establish a few categories for the cards. So trash is obviously the worst category. You never want to pick these cards. Then you've got the meh category. That's like you don't want these cards, but it's not horrible if you have them, and if you have to pick them to avoid the trash, so be it. Then above that we have the alright category. These are fine cards to have. You don't mind having them, but they're not really what you want, but you don't mind picking them if you don't have the good cards. And then the good category, the yay category, these are the cards you actually want. There you go. So 4 categories from good, I want it, alright, I don't mind it, meh, I'd rather not have it, and trash, I don't want this shit anywhere in my deck. So, Dragonlark, trash, yep. Helm of Mechazor, this one's interesting. 2/2 for 1 is honestly not any better than a 2/1. It still gets killed in 1 hit. But if you have a couple mechs, it could be good because it progresses the build. If you have at least 5 mechs, you will have Mechazor at some point in your game. If you do go into fatigue, then just having Mechazor, it's just 1 extra big threat, could help. But only do this if you actually have a couple mechs, because otherwise this guy just doesn't do anything on the board. Komodo Charger, it has 3 health. But only 1 attack. Yeah, it's trash. Because 1 attack doesn't do anything. Maw, it's a 3/1. This one's a little better because 3 attack is enough to actually do some damage to the general. And also it can trade with the 2/3s that are usually played on 2 mana. So this one's a little bit above these, but still kind of trash. Maybe it's probably just meh. I guess if you have to pick a 1-drop, from these, Maw is like, okay. Planar Scout. This one's kind of cute because you can airdrop it to like deny your opponent mana. But it's mostly trash because it has 1 health. You'll airdrop it on a mana node, I guess, and then that's about all it'll do. It'll basically cost 0 mana in that case. But who cares? It'll die in 1 hit. Prophet of the White Palm. This one is interesting. Actually, I'm just kidding. It's trash. It's a 1/1. It doesn't do anything on the board. The effect... I mean, what spells do damage that you have to worry about? Okay, Holy Immolation, I guess. Tempest? Some random Songhai spells? Really, just not enough spells actually do damage for this to be relevant. It's trash. Swamp Entangler, it's trash. It's 0 attack. Your opponent will just kill it. It'll just slow him down slightly. Ether Master. Oh, this is the first 2-drop, by the way. This one is meh. The effect is alright to have, but the stat line is kind of bad. So, yeah, it's meh. Araki Headhunter. Ooh, this guy is actually alright, possibly even good. It depends on your deck. Opening Gambit is fairly common among cards that you pick, but you don't want to play him on turn 2 usually unless you definitely have Opening Gambit in your hand. So how good this card is going to depend on what your deck is like. If you have a decent number of opening gambits, yeah, this will be a good card to pick. If not, probably don't pick it. But even if you just have some opening gambit, it's not too hard to hold on to this guy for later and make him like a 5/3 for 2 mana. So, yeah, it's alright. Azure Horn Shaman, this bad boy, actually has a really powerful Dying Wish effect. 4 health to even 1 minion is pretty good. The thing is, this guy sometimes has a hard time dying, because with 4 health, it's a bit weird, but it's actually, I think, alright. Because if you play him with another 2-drop, usually you can just, run him into the face and try to get him to die. And again, if he hits even one thing, plus 4 health is a lot. So, yeah. I'd say it's alright, but I'm not going to call it a good card because it has 1 attack, and there'll be times where he doesn't activate at all. Bloodtear Alchemist, the effect is decent. It'll sometimes pick off stuff like the mini Jaxies in the corner or the Pyromancers that Ventruvian loves to play. But the stat line is kind of bad. But it's definitely not deserving of trash because it is kind of a response card. It's just not... It's kind of a low impact response card. And response cards are good. But it's meh. We're going to call it meh. Blue Tip Scorpion. It's a 3/1, just like the Maul, but for 2 mana. Oh, it deals double damage to minions, except nobody cares. It's trash. Ephemeral Shroud. The stat line is obviously bad, but the opening gambit is actually useful. Dispelling is something you do want to have in your deck, because there's any number of minions you could run up against where you have to dispel them if you don't have enough removal, because otherwise they'll just steamroll out of control. And Ephemeral Shroud is sometimes the only option you have. Flameblood Warlock, extremely aggressive, but generally in Gauntlet, aggression, unless you actually manage to draft a super aggressive deck, this guy will fit well there because he does 3 damage immediately, and the fact that it damages you doesn't matter because you'll kill your opponent first. But otherwise, it could also backfire if your opponent answers with the Healing Mystic and just heals back the damage. But it's probably meh. But it's also alright if you're drafting aggressively. Ghost Links, it's a Repulsor Beast that teleports randomly. That's bad because you could sometimes teleport in a spot where it changes nothing at all and the effect is completely wasted. Seriously, pick Repulsor Beast over this. It's mostly trash, but it's probably a little bit higher up in the trash. It's just inconsistent is the problem. Golem Metallurgist. This card's alright, possibly even good, because the effect will sometimes matter. You do tend to draft some golems here and there, and if you manage to get a golem out for 1 less mana, all the better. Yeah, it's fine. It is a fine card, possibly even good. Healing Mystic. Ooh, that's definitely a good card. Good stat line, 2/3 for 2 is what you want. And the healing effect you can always use. You can heal your general, you can heal a minion that just attacked the enemy general, whatever. It's always good. Jaxi. It's another good 2-drop because the 1/1 in the corner is a pain in the ass sometimes. Some people have actually said this card should be nerfed. I've never felt really too oppressed by it, but it's definitely a really good 2-drop. So yeah, definitely a good card in Gauntlet. Mana Forger. It's possibly trash unless you have a lot of spells, in which case it could be good, but it's kind of hard to draft a lot of spells. I mean, in most drafts I don't get more than like 8 spells, so yeah, I would probably steer clear unless you happen to have a lot of spells. Piercing Mantis is, on the other hand, goes straight to the trash. 2/2 for 2 is horrible, and Frenzy does nothing because it's going to be killed immediately. Primus Fist. Now that is a good card. 2/3 for 2, sure, and then 1 attack to all friendly minions nearby. It's pretty good. Even if you hit one thing, that's actually pretty good. Turning a 2/3 into a 3/3 is actually a big deal because it can then kill an enemy 2/3 and then still survive to maybe hit the general or something. So Primus Fist is definitely a prime pick. Rock Pulverizer, the small taunt. Provoke, I mean, is what I meant to say, of course. It's kind of meh because it only has 1 attack, but it's a little bit better than the 0/3 since it'll actually do some damage. but I'm not really a big fan of this card. I used to run it when I started out because I didn't have very many options, but honestly, it's really not that good. Rustcrawler, artifacts don't come up very much, but sometimes they do, and they can be devastating, but usually you can remove them just by hitting the general. So, except for a occasional Arclight Regalia or Mask of Shadows, you won't really need it. But it's not terrible to have like one, but only one. Any more than one is going to be trash because you're not going to encounter that many artifacts. Skyrock Golem is trash. 2-3 is much better than 3-2, and this guy doesn't even have an effect. Don't even bother. Veil Hunter, this is the first of the ranged minions. 1-2 is pretty bad in stats in general. Ranged, however, means you get to do damage from afar without retaliation consistently. So that's why this card avoids the trash for that reason. It's probably just meh. It's kind of just a nuisance more than anything. The ranged minions tend to be kind of win more, in that if you're doing alright on the board, putting down a creature like that can be dangerous. But otherwise, it's just not. And unlike the Pyromancer, because it only does 1 damage, your opponent can even just live with it. Or he'll just send a Tiger at it or something. But it's not trash because range does have value. Wings of Mechazor, the second of the mechs, with Airdrop. Much like the Planar Scout dude, you can just drop him in front of a mana node to just mess with your opponent. And he actually has enough health to survive. But really, other than the first turn, I don't think it's really very good. It's kind of meh. Unless you're going for mechs, this is like not a terrible mech to pick. But I wouldn't go out of my way unless you're desperate for 2 drops. Alcuin Loremaster is a good card because the ability to get a spell is really good. It's not even the fact that you draw an extra card. It's that you get a specific card that you want when you want it. You need healing? Okay, well, you play a healing card, then you can get a second healing card. Your opponent just play a devastating spell? Get a copy of it, no problem. Really good card. Sees plane constructed, and for good reason. Blazehound, it has 2 health. I don't like creatures that have 2 health, unless they have a good effect. Airdrop is not one of those effects. It is trash. Bloodshard Golem, 4-3. Now, it only has 1 more health than the Blazehound, but having 3 health is so much better than having 2 health, because you don't die from the general attacking you. And 4 attack means he can trade with... He trades pretty well with just about any 3-drop and 2-drop. So he's alright. He's an alright 3-drop. Cannon of Mechazor, this one is... it's alright. 2 damage is enough to be a threat. Although I wouldn't pick too many of these because 2-2 is not very threatening overall. But unlike the Veil Hunter, if a Tiger is sent after it, it'll just trade with it, which is perfectly fine. And also it's a decent mech. Ranged minions, like I said, tend to be pretty nice to have every now and again because they can do damage without retaliation. And 2 damage is enough to be, like, dangerous. But I can't call it a good card because it's just not enough. Not big enough of a threat. But it's alright. Chaos Elemental, ooh, 4-4 for 3. That's pretty good. The teleporting around isn't that big of a deal, really, because it'll take a hit from the general or from a 2-drop. It'll just go somewhere, and it'll eventually come back. More likely your opponent will just kill it instead of, like, wasting his time teleporting it around. And 4-4 means it'll trade very well with any 3-drop, and it'll do a decent amount of damage to the general. Cool card. Possibly even good. I actually don't even know if I can call it good because I've never actually been able to draft one. But it's probably pretty good. Crimson Oculus. This is another interesting 3-drop. When your opponent summons anything, you get +1/1. So if it even summons one thing, it's a 3-4. 3-4 for 3 is pretty good. So it can snowball pretty quickly and become quite threatening on its own. Usually if you play it on 3, you put it like behind your general, and then your opponent has a kind of a tough decision. Do I play anything? Do I let it grow bigger? I don't know. It's actually a good 3-drop. 3-drops tend to be kind of meh. So this one stands above the rest. It's a good pick. Crossbones. Specifically designed to mess with ranged creatures. You'll come up against ranged creatures every now and again in Gauntlet, so having 1 Crossbones is probably fine. Wouldn't go out of my way to pick more, because what if they don't have any ranged creatures? Then it's just a box standard 3-drop, but it's not terrible. 3 mana, 3/3 with nothing. It's not like horribly bad. So it's alright for the first one, gets worse. It's meh for the other ones. Golem Vanquisher, 3 mana, 2/4. I don't know why this card is legendary. It's not like that good or anything, or even that impressive. But it gives everything provoke. I mean, unless you have a lot of golems, it's really gonna not matter. It's just a 3 mana 2/4, which is, it's alright, slightly meh. But the thing is, if you're picking a legendary, you can probably get a much better pick than this. Lady Luck, cool card. Mostly used in a combo deck where you follow it up with a whole lot of other crap, and then everybody gets buffs and provoke. In Gauntlet, it's a bit tougher, but if you hold on to her, it's not too hard to play like 2 other things with her, and then she gets pretty decent value. So I'd say it's an alright card. Possibly good, but I wouldn't really go out of my way to pick her unless the other picks were like, well, shit, like Golem Vanquisher. I would pick Lady Luck over Golem Vanquisher for sure. Mirkwood Devourer, 3 mana 2/4, friendly minions around it that are summoned around it get +1/1. That's actually pretty decent. Stat line is enough that it'll probably survive, and again, if you get even one thing summoned next to it, the +1/1 is pretty good. It could be quite threatening if your opponent can't remove it. It's like a +1/1 factory. Yeah, I'd say it's good. I mean, if you're gonna get a 3-drop, this is about as good a 3-drop as you're gonna get. Moguai. Ah, it's that dude I played several times in Gauntlet. Wait, what? Oh my god, it's amazing. No, I'm talking about the card now. After it moves, draw a card. Card draw isn't that big of a deal, really, in Duelyst, so this card is just alright, because the stat line is alright. It's alright. Prismatic Illusionist is trash, horrible stat line, and I mean, you're not going to pick this card ever, what, because it synergizes with spells. Even if you have a lot of spells, it's not even that good. But you're not going to have that many spells, and so you're not going to pick this card. And so this card is trash. Ignore like the plague. Putrid Dreadflayer, it's alright. 2/4 for 3 is fine. Flying is moderately useful. It's an alright 3-drop. Repulsor Beast, now that is a good card, because teleporting stuff away is good. You can kind of use it as removal. If your opponent drops a big-ass provoke in front of you, and you don't have any removal in hand, Repulsor Beast got you covered. And often the creature is teleported so far away that it can't come back in time. But not always. But it's good to have a few of these. Unless you already have like a ton of removal. Saberspine Tiger is a good card. It's a pretty nice, just a response card. 3 damage for 3 mana is alright. The main use of him is to just attack 1-attack creatures, killing like Veil Hunters and stuff. So that he kills them and survives, and then usually does 3 damage to the enemy general. That's the best value out of a Tiger. Also, just to finish off your opponent if they're low on health and running away from you, a card like this could clinch the victory. Good card overall. It's played in Constructed even. Sarlacc. Amusing, but honestly, it's trash. 1/1 doesn't do anything on the board. It doesn't matter if he just dies several times over. It'll just get ignored. Your opponent might not even bother dispelling it. I would never pick this in Gauntlet. Shield Oracle, 3 mana 2/2. That shields a minion from damage for a turn. It's a decent effect. Usually helps you get a good trade, like your 4-drop will kill their 4-drop for free. It's kind of like conditional removal, so it's alright, but I would maybe not pick more than one of this, because it's only good if you already have a board. If you don't have a board, it's completely useless. Silvertongue Corsair is an alright 3-drop, actually. It's another alright 3-drop. The fact that it takes no damage from the general is actually a lot better than it seems. Though it's mostly just good early on, where playing it as your first creature means the enemy general can't assist in killing it, and so it can actually be quite annoying. Yeah, that's all I can say about it. It's not amazing, certainly, and once there's more creatures on the board, it tends to just die randomly. But, it's alright. Songweaver, 3 mana 3/2, protects your other stuff from being targeted by spells until the end of your next turn. It's kind of meh. Stat line is bad, but I can't throw it in the trash because if you had one of these, you could conceivably use it to protect your board from stuff. But that's only in a rather specific situation, and we don't like specific cards, so meh. Spelljammer, basically it's a 3 mana 2/4. Like, the effect is pretty much insignificant. It could actually be bad, because if you play it, you'll draw 1 card, and if they kill it, they draw 2 cards. Honestly, I'm just gonna throw it in the trash just because you never want to pick this. I mean, unless it's up against like some of those joke legendaries like Black Locust or something. I guess it's better than those, but nah, it's kind of trashy. Yeah, don't pick this. Sunseer. 3 mana 2/4. When it deals damage, you restore 2 health. I'd even call this a good card because if it lands even 1 heal, it's kind of like the Healing Mystic. And that's perfectly fine. And if it lands 2 hits, you could even restore 4 health, and that's really good. So I'm actually going to call it a good 3-drop. Sword of Mechazor, 3 mana, 3/3. Yeah. Frenzy is alright, I guess. If you're going for mechs, this is a decent one to pick. Otherwise, it's sometimes decent. Sometimes it's just 3 mana, 3/3. But I'm going to call it alright. A lot of these 3-drops are just kind of alright. They're just like, whatever, throw it on 3 mana. Sworn Avenger. Now this guy's the Snowball Master. 3 mana, 1/3 with ranged. So 3 health range means he's a bit more resilient than the other guys. Now remember, the other ranged guy was a 3 mana 2/2. This guy's a 1/3, but usually you can just play him and then attack with your general, and then he'll be a 2/3 with the potential to grow. It's actually a good card. It can be really dangerous if it's not answered right away. If your opponent doesn't have like a long range silence or remove it, this guy's gonna be a thorn in his side. It's actually pretty well costed for 3 mana. And if it's not removed, it could easily grow to like 3, 4, and just the value rolls. But it is vulnerable to stuff like Tiger. Also Natural Selection. But it's a good card. I think it's a pretty decent pick. Sivrel, whatever, the Exile. 3 mana, 1/4 ranged. Pulls minions in front of him. It's kind of amusing, actually. But the thing is, realistically, a ranged minion should be hanging out in the back. And if it's in the back, it doesn't want stuff next to it. Although you could use them to pull stuff that you want to kill. You know, like if your opponent plays some like delicate target, so to speak, just pull it in, beat the crap out of it. Because the thing that gets pulled in doesn't deal damage back. So you can kind of use them to pick off specific targets. So it's actually alright. It has 4 health, so it's fairly sturdy. Like for ranged creatures, it's fairly sturdy. That's alright. Venom 2, 3 mana, 3/3. When your opponent summons something, deal 1 damage to him. It's reasonable. Usually it'll work at least once, so it'll do 1 damage. It's actually pretty effective against artifacts because it will remove the charges, but that almost never comes up. That's an alright 3-drop. Void Hunter, it's got 2 health. I don't like that. The fact that it draws you a card is kind of meaningless. Again, same as the that other card I was talking about. Card draw is a lot less important in this game since you're drawing 2 cards per turn. It's trash. Windrunner. Now that's a good card actually, because if it survives, it could very easily just start racking up the value, because it'll work on anything you already hit on the board and also anything you play on the same turn. And even if it hits one thing, it's actually already pretty good value. At worst case, it gets like dispelled. It's not that bad. It's a good 3-drop actually. Windstopper. Well, it's got 7 health, which is pretty good, but it has only 1 attack. 1 attack sucks ass. So this card sucks ass. Stopping ranged minions is a bit too specific. Artifact Hunter. Draw a random artifact from your deck. You don't generally get that many artifacts. I guess if you have a really good one, then this could be alright. It's kind of like just gets it into your hand. 4 mana, 3/5, draw a card when it comes in. That's... If you don't have any artifacts, it's trash. If you do, it's either going to be meh or alright, depending on how good the artifacts are. Black Locust is basically trash. I mean, it's a 2/2 for 4. That's all there is to it. Yes, it's flying, which is great. But all it takes is 1 area of effect, and all the Locusts are dead. I mean, I could imagine where occasionally this will actually kill your opponent because he can't do anything. And then there's 1 Locust, and there's 2, and then there's 4, and then it's just a swarm. And I'm sure it'd be pretty funny to play a game like that, but this is obviously a joke card. If you win a game with this, you have my respect. But otherwise, stick to better cards. Chassis of Mechazor. 5/4, protection from spells is not that big of a deal. 4 health means he just attacks 1 thing, and then the general will finish him off. So, not a good 4-drop. You want a 4-drop that'll stick on the board a bit better. So we're going to put him in the meh category. Duelyst. Kind of amusing, but honestly, first of all, 2 health is really bad. And then the 0-10, I guess it'll slow down your opponent quite a bit. It's extremely vulnerable to dispelling, where he gets dispelled and instantly killed, and it does nothing. Cute, but I'm gonna say it's trash. Emerald Rejuvenator is actually a good card. It's definitely a good card. 4 health to your general is pretty good. 4/4 for 4 is kind of meh, but the extra 4 health is quite valuable. So if you can pick this up, yeah, go for it. I mean, you will almost always benefit from healing your general by 4. Can't really go wrong with this guy. Just like a constructed, he's everywhere. You're gonna play him in Gauntlet too. Fire Spitter, it's another ranged creature. It's a 3/2 this time. It's obviously a lot worse than Sworn Avenger because it's 1 more mana. It's kind of meh. 3 attack is enough that he can't just be ignored, but 2 health means it's easy pickings. Just because it's ranged, it's gonna save it from the trash, but don't go out of your way to pick this unless you just have garbage picks. Frostbone Naga, I'm actually even gonna call it a good card. Nah, it's kind of on the border of good and alright, because the area of effect is really helpful sometimes if you don't have any other ways to do it. The thing is, it hits your own stuff, so just be wary of that. You know, if your opponent has a weapon equipped or an artifact, yeah, it's gonna remove a charge, just so you know. But it's usually gonna hit more things of your opponent than your own. If you don't have any area of effect, the Naga will take care of it. So yeah. Hey, Hellstone Golem, aka Chillwind Yeti. Basically the best stats for 4 mana. It's a good card, honestly. It gets the job done. It's fairly sticky, trades well. It's exactly what you want. Lightbender, aka Ephemeral Shroud Senior. Dispels everything around it, including your stuff, so be mindful of that. If you need this spell and you don't have it, this card's alright. Otherwise, you know, you don't want it. But again, it's going to depend on how much of this spell you already have. If you have this spell, don't pick it. If you don't, go for it. Unless the other cards are like, and this is up against like good cards, then don't do it. Mind Warper. It's kind of meh. 3 health on 4 mana is kind of weak, but not the worst. The spell you get is, it's not just that you get an extra card, it's that you see what your opponent has, which is nice, but unfortunately sometimes it fizzles out, and when it does, it's really bad, so we're gonna call it a meh. It's kind of like the average. Mobius. Hilarious, but it's trash. The stat line is just really bad. Basically, if you play it and it survives, it becomes a 5/3. And then, if it doesn't die, then it'll go back to being a 3/5. And then it's kind of weird, but your opponent's going to be able to kill it. Definitely. Cool looking card, though. I'll give him that. The Infinity Sign. Oh, what? What? Oh, there's actually a guy hiding in there. Whoa, I didn't know that. That's sick. That's good stuff. Anyways, Owl Beast Sage. He synergizes with himself, but he starts off at a disadvantage. You have to play a spell just to get him to Hailstone Golem level, which is not really ideal. It's kind of meh. Yeah, it's at best meh. Primus Shieldmaster, the bigger provoke minion. 2 attack is unfortunately too low, so we're going to keep it in the meh category. Not trash, because slowing down your opponent can be helpful with 6 health, but up against a larger board, he just gets killed without doing all that much. Purgatos, the Realm Keeper. Cool card. It's kind of like the Rejuvenator, although he has the chance to hit more than once, which will make him quite a bit better than Rejuvenator. But often he won't. And you don't control whether he heals or damages. I guess it's alright, but I wouldn't like go out of my way to pick this. Definitely worse than Rejuvenator. Definitely would not pick this over Hailstone Golem. But maybe I pick it over a lot of other stuff. It's alright. Sand Burrower, 4 mana 4/4 with a basically useless effect. It's pretty trash. Silhouette Tracer. Cool effect could be good as sort of a get out of shitty situation free card to teleport yourself away. Kind of like all these other utility cards, wouldn't want to pick more than one because the stats are just bad. 2 attack is kind of low. So the first one's alright, after that don't bother. Sun Elemental, one of the newer cards. It's actually alright. It's not too hard to hit at least 2 things with it and get basically a 3/7 worth. But you don't want to pick too many of them because you have to have creatures on the board for it to work. 1 is fine, 2 at most. Any more than that and it's going to become really cloggy. Thorn Needler, the twin opposite of the Hailstone Golem. It's a 6/4/4/4. It's a bit worse than the 4/6 because with 4 health means it basically gets 1 hit at the general and then it gets killed by a 2-drop or something. Whereas the Hailstone Golem can often kill a 2-drop and maybe kill another 2-drop before it dies and maybe gets another hit at the general. I don't even know if I can even call it alright, honestly. Just too low on health. Not very sticky. It's between alright and meh. Not really a card you want to go for. But it's not like horrible. Because 6 attack is kind of threatening. But at the same time, it could just be taken out a bit efficiently. So it's probably meh. Twilight Sorcerer, that is a good card. Just like Alcuin, it basically produces another spell of what you've already played. And usually you'll be drafting spells that help you, which aka removal or really good buffs. And getting more of those is really good. Again, it's not about card advantage, it's about getting more responses to your opponent's threats. So yeah, really good card actually. Young Flamewing, 5/3 is pretty trash for 4. Flying, I mean, it's gonna fly over the general, I guess, and get a hit in, and then it's gonna die soon after that. It's trash. Ash Method, basically it's like 6/9 for 5, but not really, because the 3 2/3s are easier to kill than 1 6/9. And also the other 2 methods go in random spaces, so they could go in really bad spots. It's actually, honestly, I think it's just trash. Like, it's too unreliable. Blightmoth's Golem, that's actually it's alright. It's basically the most stats for the cost, but there's just better 5-drops you'd rather pick over this. But it's perfectly alright if you don't get any other ones. 9 health means that it doesn't die too easily. And it's a Golem. Yeah, the Golems are the kings of stats. Captain Hank Hard. 2/4 for 5 mana. Wow. Well, it's ranged. Okay, and then when it deals damage, it heals itself. What? It's terrible. It is terrible. It belongs in the trash. Dagger Kiri. Celerity is pretty good, but 2 attack is a bit low for a 5-drop. It really doesn't do well against other bigger creatures. And again, 2 damage means it won't even kill anything. If it attacks a 2/3 twice, it'll take 4 damage. It's really only good if you can buff it, but that's really only Lionar, so it's meh at best. Trash for a lot of other factions. Dancing Blade, now that's a good card. Stat line is a bit low, but not too bad, and the effect is pretty good. 3 damage, basically it's like a Hailstone Golem, but for 1 more mana, you do 3 damage to something. It's pretty good. Although it has the restriction of it has to be a minion in front of it. If it hit anything for 3 damage, it'd be insane. But only in front, and so sometimes people will play around it by putting like their general in front of it. Because they anticipate this card. Makes sense. It's a good card nonetheless. Because even if you just played it for the stats for 5, it's not like terrible. Fireblazer, 5/5 with Provoke. Meh. It's just meh. It's kind of annoying to deal with, but it's not that durable for 5 mana. So, it's meh. But it's not trash, because Provoke on a fairly large creature can be useful. Alright, moving on to the big stuff. Firestarter is basically trash. 3/5 for 5 is really bad. And the effect, if you cast a spell, you get a 1/1 Spell Spark with Rush. Hooray. So if you cast 1 spell with him, then it's kind of like a 4/6. Not even that, really. It's more like a 4/5. That's still bad. You have to cast like 2 or 3 spells for this to be even like decent. Not gonna happen. It's trash. Keeper of the Value. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, the worst creature you're going to get is a 2-drop, and even if you get like a 2/3 with it, it's perfectly fine. And you can sometimes get bigger things with it. They call him Keeper of the Value for good reason. It's a good card. Unlike this one, it's a 5-mana 2/5. It's a Captain Hank Hart's sister, and she's just as awful as he is. Possibly a little better, because, well, she has 1 more health, and her effect is a slightly better. But you're playing a 5-drop that does 2 damage. No. Rogue Warden. 5-mana 4/3 with range. A little bit better. But, again, it all goes back to the whole win more thing. Where if you're doing alright on the board and you play this in like a faraway corner, it can be really hard to deal with. Because 4 damage for free is no joke. But it's bad if you're behind because it doesn't really threaten your opponent much. And with 3 health, it gets killed by a tiger, for instance. I'd say it's meh. I'm going to call it meh. Sworn Defender, it's actually alright. It's kind of like the Blightmoss Golem. It's slightly better, though. 7 health instead of 9 is not that much less. And he'll usually heal himself by about that much. So you could basically compare him to the Blightmoss Golem. Sometimes a little bit better. Possibly good. You could almost call him good. Almost. The High Hand. This guy can be really large. Gets up to 8-9 unless he is dispelled. If he is dispelled, it's kind of sad because it's 2/3. But if your opponent doesn't have Dispel, it can be really good. I'm going to call him alright. It is quite threatening, though, because 8-9 is... I mean, compared to the 4-9 of the Blightmoss Golem, it's incredibly more dangerous. Basically, it's a Dispel checker. You have Dispel? No? Good game. You do? Well, good for you, I guess. So, hopefully your opponent dispelled other stuff before you play this. And in that case, the high hand is pretty good. Zen Rui. This guy's pretty fun. I once was able to steal a Whistling Blade with him. My opponent conceded immediately. It's actually pretty good, I'd say. There's always going to be things you can steal with him. And if you think about it, okay, so he's a 4/3. That's worth 3 mana, right? Something like that. And then for 2 mana, you basically remove an enemy 2-drop and play your own 2-drop. Seems like you get decent value out of him. So, I'd say it's a good card. It seems like it could be a nice board swing. Archon Spellbinder. Pretty good stats for 6 mana. 7-9 is really fat. And the effect is actually kind of nice. It sometimes annoys your opponent. Just really solid. It's not like, you know, amazingly good or anything, but it's pretty good. It's definitely a good one. All right, coming towards the end, Death Blighter. It's a good card. The stat line is pretty horrible for 6 mana, but the area of effect damage really does help sometimes, and it only hits your opponent's stuff, not yours. So you can usually get like 2 hits out of it, and it'll help you come back on the board sometimes for sure. Like if you hit 2 things, you deal 6 damage. He did his job. Pretty decent pick. Eclipse 3/7 seems really horrible for 6. Basically, the effect is best case scenario, your enemy general takes like 7 damage. I think it's trash. The stats are just really bad. First Sword of Akrain. I'm gonna call him meh, because while it's a cool effect, it's kind of pricey and the stats are not very good. 5 health is just not that much. But if you can play him and he sticks, it could actually be really good. Suddenly all your stuff getting +1 attack could be really good. So, But again, I don't know. It's kind of situational and kind of win-the-mori as well. On a board, it could be really dangerous, but without one, it's pretty bad. So that's why I'm going to call him meh, bordering on average. Jacques Drusite. Mr. Summon ranged bullshit in every corner. I guess you could call this guy the AoE checker. If your opponent doesn't have AoE, he's going to be really sad. Because, well, suddenly getting 5 extra ranged damage is pretty dangerous. So, good card for that. If nothing else. Although, wouldn't be my first pick. But all that means is just he's not amazing. It's still good. Still a good legendary to get. Serpentine is trash because it has 4 health for 6 mana. You know that 4 mana 6/4 that I already didn't like? Well, this guy's like that with, well, for 2 more mana. The fact that it has Frenzy is not really relevant because if you play this on 6, it's gonna get killed immediately. And if not, because your opponent doesn't have a board and then Frenzy becomes insignificant, then, well, let's just say there's better... Like, you could play the Archon, it's a 7/9. Like, there's no comparison. It's trash. The Big Bug, 6/5 with flying, probably better than the Serpentine, not by much, but because it's flying, you can just play it like out of the way and then fly into something for 6 damage. So it's maybe at best meh, not really a 6-drop you want. Storm Metal Golem, pretty big stat line for a 6-drop. It's alright. Generally, you don't need creatures this big to win, but if you do get it and the other picks aren't amazing and you don't have any other big creatures, could be alright. But mostly meh. Dark Nemesis. So, this one, it's kind of like a sit and wait legendary, where you play this, well, your opponent better have Dispel, or he's going to be really sad, because it's 4 damage every single turn. And if your opponent tries to get close, he's going to get clocked for massive damage. It is slow, though, so if you're losing, it's not going to do anything. It's kind of like a tiebreaker card, where if neither player has achieved superiority, when you're nearing fatigue, this card will tilt the battle in your favor. So it's alright. Probably even good. Dragonbone Golem. It's like the biggest golem. It's a little bit too big. Honestly, if you're playing a 7 costing card, it has to do something. 10/10 is really fearsome and can really screw your opponent over if you can't remove it. But other times it'll get like teleported away or stunned or something. Again, it's the kind of card you might have like 1 or 2 of in your deck, because if nothing else happens, just drop a big creature and hope that it sticks. But this one's one like the most basic of them all. It's just meh. Grailmaster, 6/6, but gets extra abilities when you summon minions. It's another Dispel checker, because if you play him and he doesn't get killed or dispelled, well, things could get really nasty if he starts getting things like Celerity and Ranged. But again, it's more like a play him and see if it sticks kind of card. You can only play a card like that when you're not behind on the board, so it's kind of meh, actually, but it's alright. I guess it's alright for the standard of a big creature, but again, you don't want too many of those. Pato, hilarious card, but I don't even know. It can really mess things up, but it's extremely random, and it could actually completely screw you. And generally in Gauntlet, you don't want RNG cards because you need a good win rate to get a good reward. So you probably don't want a card like this. 6 health is not like horrible. The 12 attack is pretty fun. It's pretty high attack, yeah. But Mr. Pato, I wouldn't want to pick you. I guess we gotta bin this guy, even though he's hilarious. Pandora, kind of like Dark Nemesis, it's a tiebreaker legendary, where it just keeps spawning wolves, like 3/3 wolf, 3/3 wolf, and these are wolves with abilities too. So, if nothing else is going on, she's gonna steamroll the game in your favor, with just unlimited value. Red Sinja is an example of a 7-drop you want to play because it has immediate effect on the board. You play her, and then she'll do 7 damage to something usually. It says random, but it's not too hard to position her to hit what you want. And then your general just has to attack something. So it's pretty good. Pretty good. It works really well with Tempest if you're playing Liner, because Tempest will hit you as well, and it will trigger Sinja again, so you can kind of use her to clear 2 things. Pretty good card, actually. Rook. 5/5 for 7. That's kind of sad. At the end of your turn, gets a random faction ability. Now, I haven't actually never seen Rook in action, but the faction abilities are things like Grow or I think Backstab. But again, I've never even seen anybody play Rook. The stats are so bad that I can't imagine Even if he gets one of those abilities, I don't think it's gonna make up for it. Whistling Blade, that's a lot of health on a provoke. On the other hand, 2 attack is pretty bad. Probably trash, because it's just really, really slow. And even though it takes a lot to kill him, it just doesn't really do anything. I mean, for a 7-drop, you gotta be a lot more threatening than that. And that's like the least threatening 7-drop in the game. Zuriel, the dragon bird thing, whatever it is. So, pretty good for the most part, because you can play him on 7 and resurrect a few things and basically recover a board. You could think of him as a anti-board clear insurance. It's really good if you previously played some powerful rush minions, because they'll come back with a good chance to be spawned where they can attack again. The stat line is basically like 5 mana worth, so as long as you get like, if you get 2 of any creatures really, it's probably good value. It's pretty decent legendary. And lastly, Chimera. 8 mana. Pretty, I'm not even going to call them decent stats. 5 attack isn't really that good for an 8-drop. The tokens that it summons are mostly garbage, with the exception of Mechazor and like, there's like this Drake token and like one other thing. But most of the other ones are just like really bad. I don't know because I haven't seen all of them, but it is what I read from other people saying. So only really Magmar can make this work with stuff like Flash Reincarnation and Kujata. Otherwise, you play this on 8. I mean, man, it takes your whole turn and doesn't do anything. It's not really a card. It's not even like threatening anything. Like, you might summon 1 token. It's RNG based. There's better legendaries. Send this crap to the bin. So that is it for the neutrals. So now you see why I couldn't do all the cards, because this would take like 2 hours. So we'll cover the other cards some other time. Anyways, I hope you learned a little bit from what I had to say. Drafting a good deck is definitely important, but you also have to play well. Definitely you want to put a premium on early game cards and cards that respond to your opponent's stuff. When we go over the spells, you'll see more of what I'm talking about when I basically call all the removal spells good and a lot of other spells just bad. Anyways, stay strong. Keep looking for that 7 wins. Get your free packs. Get your free gold and all that good stuff. And I'll see you guys next time.